This episode is brought to you by Tostitos, the official chip and dip of the NFL. From tailgating to wearing the same socks every game day, everyone has their own way of supporting their team. And now, you can show your support even more with Tostitos. Get their delicious restaurant-style tortilla chips in unique packaging for almost any NFL team. But they're only available for a limited time while supplies last. So hurry to get your local Tostitos team bag at a store near you. Learn more at Tostitos.com.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor and subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, like button, subscribe button. You can find us there at Empire Media, AMPIRE. It's always much appreciated when you choose to watch or listen to this show. Today, I'm joined by three of my fellow beat writers on the Commanders beat. Matt Paris from the Washington Times, Pete Hailey from NBC Sports Washington and the Washington Football Talk podcast, and Sam Fortier from the Washington Post. I wanted to bring on three of my colleagues who have been out there on a daily basis with me so they can share their insight from what they learned about the Commanders this summer and what they think going into the season. We have less than a week till the first game against Jacksonville, so I wanted to touch base with them on their expectations for the season. Areas of concern. Do they believe this defense can be better? If not, why not? If so, why? What they think of the rookie class and how this team fits right now going into the season in the NFC East. They all gave very good insight. They're going to tell you at the end of the episode where you can follow them on Twitter. Do me a favor, please wait to the end and check them out and give them a follow. You can read my work, of course, on ESPN.com. I'll have a story up this week on Carson Wentz. He's matured throughout the years. Will that be enough to help him on the field in Washington so he can regain the footing in his career and become a top half quarterback in the NFL again? Certainly, Washington is optimistic. And what I will say, and I've talked about this before, Wentz feels very good about what he has going in this area with the team and also from a lifestyle. I think it fits him well. Will that matter? We're going to find out this year. Anyway, with all that said, I want to get to this episode because it was a good episode. I enjoyed the insight from my three colleagues. They're my young colleagues, but they're very smart and sharp. So I wanted to share that with you. So let's get to the conversation with Matthew Paris from the Washington Times, Pete Hailey from NBC Sports Washington, and Sam Fortier from the Washington Post.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast.
There you go, Matt Paris. So now Sam Fortier asked me to start recording this before he came on. So I'm going to see what bit he has in mind to do this. So here comes Sam. This is always, all right, Sam, what's your bit?
I set up some party lights because it's a party in here.
Oh, look at that.
Also, I figured that Keim needed some YouTube views. So if we talk about it on the pod, people will be incentivized to look at the video.
Thanks for coming on, Sam. Great start. Hey, but anyway, listen, I wanted to bring together the four youngest beat reporters that cover the Commanders. So that's why we're all here. I think we're all about the same age, so we can just dispense of that stuff. But I do want to bring you guys on just for some predictions, for some thoughts on the season. You guys are all obviously around the team every day. Great insight from each one of you guys. And if you're watching this, listening to it, go follow each one of them on Twitter, read their stuff. Matt Paris from the Washington Times, Pete Hailey from NBC Sports Washington, Sam Fortier from the Washington Post. So let's get started. And I want to let's just go for season expectations. What, after being around this team now, look at Sam. This is amazing. Yeah, if you're not watching,
I'm having so much fun right now, and we haven't even started. This is just exciting.
I wanted to bring. I know Keim is a big club guy, so I wanted to bring his home court to the video. You know,
that light is really bright.
I've got some club shirts up in the closet. They may have a little bit of dust on them, but I do have some.
I would say that just from the collected guests here, this is probably already the best episode of the John Keim Report I've ever been on. Not that it's a high bar, but I think it's there.
Well, it is better when I have the other two with me there, Sam. Yes, it is. I agree. So anyway, let's get to the season expectations before this goes off the rails. Pete, let's start with you.
Yeah, so coming into training camp, I was probably at the Commanders winning 10 games based on their schedule being easier, maybe some regression in terms of bad luck with health and players taking second and third year leaps. But after seeing the defense in preseason and training camp, the lack of depth in a lot of key spots, I have deducted that from 10 wins down to 9. And there's a chance I maybe go down to 8 before the season starts. My optimism is going in the wrong direction. I still think the schedule is a lot easier. But guys like Jamin Davis, De'Ami Brown, haven't seen a ton from. And I'm worried about the defense. I think the offense is going to be able to score, but I don't think it's going to be able to score enough.
Do you not buy what we're hearing is the communication's different, et cetera, vanilla than preseason? You not buying that, or are you just skeptical?
I understand that there was probably a lack of game planning and vanilla defenses, and they're maybe trying to hide some stuff for the season, but it's the same guys, and sure, that can lead to better continuity in communication. But to me, does communication matter before the snap? After the snap, you still need to make the plays, and I don't know if they have enough guys to make those plays, especially if some of the starters go down. So they can talk and be as in sync as they want pre-snap. Post-snap, I still think there's going to be a lot of chain moving by the opponents.
Matt, you still have them at 15-2?
Yes, I've upgraded it to 16-1. You know.
Okay.
The one being they rest their starters week 18.
Of course.
Just
to get it. But no, I agree with Pete. I would say I'm a little bit more bullish on the defense only because, one, I think they've looked really good in practice. I don't know how much that will actually lead to the games, but they've looked better in practice than they have the preseason. So I've been kind of surprised at their preseason struggles. But also just kind of you look at where they were statistically, they should be able to bounce back in a lot of those categories. Like they're not going to be that bad on third down defense again. Historically, a lot of teams kind of regress to the mean, that they regressed heavily last year. They should bounce back this year, and they'll probably regress again the following year. Like it just kind of, those are the way those things go. But I'm a little bit more down on the offense. I don't know necessarily if the baseline I've kind of been using is, will they be average or above average? And I don't know. It just feels like a 20th to 17th ranked offense. And if the defense doesn't make this incredible leap, what are they? But, they did win 7 games last year with Taylor Heineke, and they have an easier schedule. So I do like the 9-win kind of projection. But
what's your concern with the offense?
Just Carson Wentz. I think he's come along kind of stronger, especially after that August stadium practice. He's looked better since then, but just the consistency. He's a guy when he gets really hot, he's hot, but when he gets cold, he's cold. And, there's just so many. I'm curious to see how many left-handed passes he throws this year, because in Indianapolis, there was like a whole 2-minute highlight video of that. And I'm just, if he throws more than one, it's going to be a problem. And, I'm just kind of interested to see where this goes.
Club Sam?
That's the number to watch, left-handed passes. But I think if you assume, like Matt said about regression on defense, if you think that Carson Wentz is going to be a roller coaster, but probably overall is like somewhere in the middle, I think average offense, average defense equals 9 wins for this team, just because of how weak the schedule is. So to me, maybe 8 wins, I could see that, but that is, I think we're all in like the right range. I think there's a chance that this could go off the rails, because I think there always is a chance with this team historically. But as of right now, I think like the most reasonable range of outcomes is like 8 to 10 wins. If you assume that both of these units, the defense gets better and the offense stabilizes a little bit.
And I'm in that same range as you guys. I think like Pete, I was at, when the schedule came out in April, my bold prediction was 10 wins, which I don't know how bold that is, but that's the range they're in. So I'm in that 8 to 10. I have concerns about defense, and mostly with the depth in the secondary, especially at corner. If anything happens to the starters, I think there's quite a drop. And I think that's a concern for me. Is Jamin Davis going to take that leap? Is the defensive line going to be a cohesive unit consistently? I'm more bullish on the offense than Matt is because of the talent they have around there. I love the fact that Curtis Samuel is healthy. concerned, obviously, with Robinson, because I think with Robinson, it changed that offense a little bit. Certainly gave more consistency running the ball. But so I'm in that same range. I think I could see, I think I'm more in that 9-win range after the summer, only because like would you guys be shocked if the defense actually played better? I don't think I would, but I want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the problem with this team is like we're all in that range, but none of us, like if I said, what would you feel better about? Taking your range and deducting it by 2 or increasing it by 2. I don't think there's like a crazy high ceiling for this team. I feel much more comfortable predicting a 6-win season than I would a 12-win season. And like the defense, yeah, if it played better, I wouldn't be surprised. But I don't know. I just think maybe with all these first rounders and these high profile names that they're just a little overvalued. Like, the first round D line that these national analysts, Kimes buddies all like to talk about. Are they all that good? If they all, like, you could be a first round pick and not be good at football. Like maybe Jamie Davis as a first rounder was a reach. Maybe Deron Payne and Montez Sweat, they're good players, not great. So even if the defense has a better season, I don't think it's going to be this wrecking unit that we all had our hopes about a couple years ago. I think they're going to be fine, and it's going to have to be an offensive led team, which in of itself is an issue because this team is wanted to be defensive led and it's not there.
And to Pete's point, like I think that this like a team with a moderate ceiling, not a high ceiling, is kind of how they set this up. And that, I think that's by pursuing Carson Wentz. That's by not drafting, a Malik Willis. And I know that there's like a lot of, very specific nuanced things about that. But when you go through the draft and you draft almost all seniors or redshirt seniors and guys that, you can plug in right away, what they are, but they don't have the crazy high ceiling. I think this is kind of what you end up with.
The question I have about the defense is how are they going to play? The beginning of last season, they just tried to rush 4 most of the time, and that they made some adjustments later in the season. But once they started blitzing more, they weren't necessarily effective at that. And so, I think there's a lot of pressure on Jack Del Rio to kind of come out strong at the gate. Same with Ron Rivera. But it's if something isn't working, how soon are they going to adapt and stray away from that versus are they going to fall into this pattern again? And, we've seen that a lot with Ron Rivera teams. They do start slow, and they have to avoid that this year because you look at the schedule, Jags and Lions right off the bat. I mean, those are 2 winnable games.
And I think that's a good point because we've seen that the last 2 years as there have been adjustments made after those first 3 or 4 weeks, especially whether it was benching Dwayne Haskins a couple years ago, convincing Landon Collins that, no, it's not a linebacker, it's a hybrid, right? But putting him in a role that is more suited for him and the defense. And to your point, Matt, too, like they were more aggressive blitzing on third downs after a certain period and actually had applied better pressure in that, not overall, but on third downs, they were better with it. And then injuries and COVID and all that. So I'm curious if they can get back to that, if they will stay aggressive now that Sweat is out there. Because part of the reason it was James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill. So you wanted to generate pressure. Will they still do that? What else for the defense, with that line? Are you guys, Sam, are you convinced that they can be that group? Or like Pete said, do you think it might just be a collection of names more than it is actual production?
When you saw the infighting on the line, obviously highlighted by the John Duran punch, but I think that there was a lack of cohesion. And the question for me is, can Scanina come in? I know he's obviously been the assistant D-line coach, but can he get them to apply rush lane discipline, to do some of those small things that Ron talked about? Ron always talks about the plays there to be made. It doesn't care who makes it. But can you get those guys to actually believe that, especially because John Allen's coming off a career year? He probably wants to sustain those numbers. Montez Sweat knows that he's not coming off a great year. He wants to prove that he's that dude again. I think Deron Payne has been, pretty good. And I know that, that punch between them was predicated on Duran not coming off the field when he was supposed to. But I think that all of those guys, have egos, want to make the money, want to show that they're those dudes. And that's a really big challenge for Scanina. And I think that's a large part of the reason Sam Mills isn't here anymore. So I think, it's a really big test for them.
And to your point, it's a contract year for Deron Payne that always messes with guys and he wants a big deal. And for Montez Sweat, that extension looms in the spring. So if you want that extension here, right, Pete? Is that you're going to say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to Sam's point about egos, there are four big egos on the Zoom screen right now, but we're all trying to work towards a better goal and a
Just wait till I
unified
punch you in the
effort.
face.
And I think
And
we're doing a great job.
I apologize for punching Sam last year too. So
Yeah, we've moved on. My thought on the D line, so much attention on what's going to happen across from Montez. When does Chase get back, and who's going to hold it down in the meantime? But in doing that, I think we've forgotten a bit that Montez isn't a grade A Von Miller pencil him down for 14 sacks a year guy. Like, he has his own issues too. He needs to be durable, and it feels like his game so far has been all these tools that haven't convened into this just awesome player yet. So even the player that we feel best about on the D line, there are worries, and I think the egos point is a really good one in all seriousness, because that D line last year, it didn't feel like they all wanted to get together for the common good. They were all trying to rush on their own and go make the play. And they've made some changes. They've gotten some guys out, but still the headliners are the same ones. And I'm stressed about their chemistry issues. And elevating Scanina, I think, was a good idea, but will it be enough to override the other problems? I don't know. So this is supposed to be the bedrock of the team, and I don't feel all that great about it.
But I was going to say that, Matt. Well, I was going to ask you too about Sweat. Is this a year where he can get will he get double-digit sacks?
I think so. I mean, I kind of liked what I've seen in, again, it's just training camp, but it does feel like he's in the backfield pretty consistently. He does seem to kind of go about, he recognizes the seriousness of this year, at least talking to us. I know he's a guy that doesn't necessarily say much to the press, but he does have those tools. The question for me is, what can Chase Young actually contribute once he's back?
Right.
It'll be a little bit, but he's still the number 2 pick from a few years ago. They've really tried to kind of build this defense around him in a sense. Like when this team was clicking in 2020, it was because his game started to elevate at another level, and it kind of unlocked the rest of the defense.
Right.
And so can he get back to that? Again, we didn't see it last year. Just what are the expectations for him internally, and how much are they actually counting on him this year to make that sort of leap? Because, I think he's actually really important to what they do.
The wait is almost over. A new football season is about to begin. Get ready for the NFL Week 1 action with Draftkings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To celebrate the return of football, Draftkings is giving new customers a can't-miss offer. Bet just $5 on any football game and get $200 in free bets instantly. Want more action for opening night? Everyone can experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. Get up 7, you win. Bet on any NFL team of your choice, and if your team leads by 7 points at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code KEIM to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code KEIM, K-E-I-M. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, Virginia only. Bonus issued as free bets. 1 early win token issued at opt-in. Moneyline bets only. Deposit and wagering restrictions apply. Eligibility and terms at DraftKings.com/football terms. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call the Virginia Problem Gambling Helpline at 888-532-3500.
Let's switch to the offensive side of the ball, because the offensive line, I have some concerns because we don't know. We haven't seen Andrew Norwell, Chase Ruia, and Trey Turner together on the field. We haven't seen Trey Turner really even working with the ones. What do you guys have concerns about that? Let me say, I think the potential depth is pretty good, because I think John Matsko does a terrific job, but I do have questions/concerns about about the starting interior group because of some of those things we haven't seen. Do you guys?
It might be like my just overwhelming faith in Matsko, but on our show with JP and Mitch, we ranked all the position groups after cuts, and I think we all had O-line like 3 or 4, and not necessarily because it's got these stars, but every one of the starters, if they're in sync, can be pretty good, and I like the depth a lot. But if you want to be concerned like you are, Keim, I get it, because with all the talk about Wentz and these receivers, I think this still is going to be an offense that wants to run the ball. That's how they were at their best a year ago in that 4-game winning streak, and once they get Robinson back, they're going to have a lot of options back there. And then when it comes to Carson Wentz, he's a guy that at times needs to stand back there for a while and like to hold the ball. And if he's not getting rid of it quickly, that's going to put a lot of stress on this group. But despite those things that are lingering in the back of my mind, I like the solid pros I have. Leno on the left side did well for himself. If Cosme can stay healthy, and then those interior guys, you're lucky to have a Schweitzer, Sadiq Charles. Big year for him if he can contribute at an NFL level. But the O-line to me is one of the few spots on this roster where I'm kind of like, I believe in it. I'm okay with it.
And my thing is less concern, probably more questions about how that's going to look. Club Sam, What do you think?
I was wondering how long it was going to take Pete to mention that he happens to be on another podcast, so I'm glad that I hit the under on 15 minutes.
Sam brought all the jokes today. He was ready for this one.
I'm surprised there's not. Yeah, he's got some merchandise behind him too that he may hold up later.
I'm wearing my own shirt.
I would say Pete's point about Carson Wentz is a really good one, because while I believe in this unit, believe in Matsko, like you guys have said, I think this is going to be a really tough test, because the last 2 years, Washington's average depth of target, its time to throw, like those have been among the fewest in the league. They're getting the ball out and they're throwing it short, which helps make the offensive line look good. And I'm not saying that like they're not good, but it certainly makes them look even better. And I know they're really good in run blocking last year too. But Carson Wentz is a guy that, as we saw on that third down sack in Kansas City, right? Like he will try to extend the play. I think you're going to see the sack numbers go up. And I don't know if that will necessarily be an indictment on the offensive line. I don't know if I also totally believe the idea that sacks are a quarterback stat, but I mean, this is a pretty big test for them. And so I think that the depth will be okay. Even if Trey Turner, who we haven't seen at all, doesn't play, I still believe in Wes Schweitzer and Sadiq Charles as the depth. So I'm less concerned about him specifically, but I think the combination of things that you got this year is going to be. I think their numbers will look worse, but I don't know if that means they will play any worse.
And I think one thing that helps that line too, going back to protection, all that is Wentz does a pretty good job executing the play action fakes, and I think that will help. But they have to make those looks that resemble one another, right? The run pass looks by the line. So if they do that, I think his fakes will help. But yeah, I mean, he definitely holds the ball too long. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think one of the key differences too is Taylor Heineke also kind of held the ball long last season. I think they were pretty close in a tenth of a second, like in terms of getting the ball out. Carson Wentz had one of the longest of holding the balls in the league, and same with Heineke. But I think the difference between them is Heineke got out of the pocket a little bit more than Wentz does, and can extend that plays that way, and that alleviates pressure off the O-line. So if Wentz is standing in there, will they regress that way because he's more susceptible to being hit? I don't know, but I do think Norwell and Turner have played at a higher level in years past. That they're still, I think they're past their prime, but they're not faded or washed by any means. I think that'll help. I mean, I think Schweitzer is going to start over Turner, so it's really just Norwell what we're talking about. And Stephen Wino isn't on the spot, so I don't think we have concerns about Norwell.
I like Wes Schweitzer. I think he's a hell of a run blocker, and in protection, he's not his strength, but he's a really good run blocker. So I think that will help. The loss of Robinson for at least the first 4 games, what's the impact there, Pete?
It's funny. It's like, oh no, we have to rely on the guy who got 1,000 yards last year and scored double-digit touchdowns and is like still super young and has all these amazing physical traits. But I understand the backlash against Antonio Gibson because he can't hold on to the ball that well. In the meantime, without Robinson, sure, it does limit the amount of things this backfield can do. And maybe I liked the idea of having Robinson be your main running back, Gibson be the guy in space, and McKissick be the 3rd and 8 player, and you make one really fantastic running back out of those 3 guys. But I think Jonathan Williams can hold down the Peyton Barber role from a couple years ago. Like, it's going to look a lot like the backfield a couple years ago instead of this like futuristic-y kind of thing, but I think it can still work. Williams getting 5 or 6 carries, Gibson being his regular self, and then McKissick being the space eater. So running back is my favorite position on this team. Now, is that great for a 2022 offense to be built around running backs? Probably not, but I think for the first month or so while Robinson's on the mend, it's going to be still one of the strengths.
2 yards in a cloud of dust.
Hell yeah.
But listen, I think they missed Barber last year, or somebody like him for what he gave them. And I still think Antonio Gibson can be good, but I think it's also the way they use him, but the way they use all those running backs. Club Sam, what are you expecting? Like, as far as the usage of the running backs, how do you see that unfolding?
I think the Jonathan Williams as Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson as some hybrid of him last year and what they wanted from him in space before, the Brian Robinson incident happened, and then J.D. McKissic and what he has been is probably a reasonable expectation. It is sort of amazing to me, the clout of Peyton Barber that he is assumed us. And I know when we talk about Brian Robinson, we're talking about his role or what he symbolizes.
Right.
But how often his name comes up versus his relative production that he had here is amazing. And I know that this is a Ron Rivera thing. Like when he got here, it was Antonio Gibson is going to be Christian McCaffrey for a very brief time, but Christian McCaffrey's name came up a lot. Cam Newton's name comes up a lot. Luke Kuechly when they drafted Jamin Davis. John
Fozzie Whitaker
signed.
Fozzie Whitaker's name comes up all the time.
Fozzie Whitaker's name comes up. It's just amazing to me how much clout these like relative role players. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because I know that's how they think of it. But it's just like we have talked about Peyton Barber so much for how many carries did he have in Washington? How many yards? I don't know.
It's probably about 2.5 yards a carry or so.
Right, but I'm just saying it's amazing. It's amazing.
And it is. I think it was more for me. It was more the role that he played that they needed more so than it was the actual guy.
Right.
But you're right. He does. His name gets brought up an awful lot, and it also kind of suggests the problems they had in short yards. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I would kind of like to see them use J.D. McKissic a lot more than they did last year.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll get 100 targets again like when Alex Smith was under center, but they really missed him down the stretch after he got hurt. I think getting those kind of chunk plays, having McKissic involved in the passing game, I think that'll help alleviate some of the things you're missing with Robinson, even though they're different styles. I just, you don't necessarily have to gain 3 to 4 yards on first down runs. I think there are other ways to gain yards. And so, I know Ron Rivera would like to be this run physical team that kind of establishes at the line, but there are other ways to go about it. And so just because Brian Robinson isn't there doesn't mean they're doomed. And I think part of that is relying a little bit more on McKissic if you don't trust Gibson.
I want to ask you.
Hold on one second. Chris Russell was listening, and as soon as you said that, he just clicked off and threw his computer through a window when you said there are other ways on first down to get yards. So just that sound you heard was probably his computer going through the window. So I'm sorry, Pete, what were you going to say?
Yeah, sorry. I want to turn this to a serious football discussion. Is that okay by you? So this is a question I've been pondering, and I feel like an idiot for pondering it. But imagine this offense is fully healthy, right? You have McLaurin, Samuel, Dotson, Sims, McKissic, Gibson, Robinson, Logan, Cole Turner. Is it possible that and I can't believe I'm going to say these words, are there too many weapons on this offense? Like, can Scott Turner get bogged down, or can this offense get bogged down of, okay, let's, who are we focusing on? Who are we getting the ball to? Like, if it almost, or like not even, too many weapons, but like there's only one football to go around, and you can't use McKissic properly if you need to use Gibson properly. And then are they getting the most out of Samuel? And then there's Jahan. Like it's fine. You'd rather it be this way than years past, but I'm thinking like they actually have a lot of guys.
And Sam, I'll let you go because you're like he's putting his hoodie over his head and all that because he clearly has something to say. But to your point, I think if they try to satisfy people versus running an offense, that's when you get in trouble. And if you're trying to we've got to get this guy the ball because we haven't gotten it to him in a while, but it's got to be within the flow of the offense. This is because my Ohio State, right? When they won the national title in after 2014, they came back in 15 with a loaded offensive roster. But I felt like they spent too much of the season trying to keep everybody happy versus running their offense. And it led to not the kind of season they thought they would have. So that, and I'm not saying this team is stacked, but I do think there's enough talent like that. So I understand your point. Sam, you clearly want to say something. Next, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
During the rebrand, should they have put Buckeyes on the Washington helmets because of their drafting?
I mean,
the Crimson Buckeyes.
But seriously, do agree with Pete. Like, I think that there is a legit, as crazy as it sounds,
Right.
No.
like you
Like,
have
this is an offense that was like 28th in scoring last year, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, they're just so loaded.
right? Like, but if everyone's healthy, which obviously is the big caveat, like how do you keep JD McKissic involved? And I know that you want to put the offense over everything, over egos for sure. But I mean, Scott Turner is going to have options. And that, I think, to me, is sort of how do you then keep everyone involved, and how do you make sure that when you're running all these sorts of motion and you're doing everything that Scott Turner does, how do you make sure that Carson Wentz is able to distribute evenly? Because I know that's a big thing that Ron talks about, but if you have a better rapport with Jahan than someone else, like, how do you not just go to that option every time?
Right. Well, I like that Pete did one podcast with Ben, and then he's mentioning Cam Sims ahead of Logan Thomas. That's
Yep.
But
Rubbed off on me.
I think Cam Sims is actually a good example of this, though, because he was the guy that last year kind of got lost in the shuffle, even though they didn't have those options. But like, he's the type of target like that would be really useful in the red zone, and then they just necessarily don't target him. And so, just I think it's a lot of the things will come down to like situational awareness. Like, if they are in the red zone, does Cam Sims come on the field? How often do they use Curtis Samuel in the backfield? I know we were talking about running backs earlier. Yeah. I think that's another way to offset it as well, is to kind of sprinkle him in more, even using Dotson in that role in terms of jet motion and stuff. So they do have ways to be creative, and that's what Scott Turner gets paid for. It's they do have a lot of weapons.
Absolutely. And I think also, like, would it shock anybody to see JD and Curtis Samuel in the backfield together, or JD and Gibson in the backfield together? Because they can do that too. Let's look at two more things. Rookie class. What are you expecting from that? Because we've seen a lot of those guys throughout the class getting reps with the ones. What are you expecting from them, Pete?
I would expect, I like the fact that they're all older, more mature, and more reliable. And I think it's going to make this a more well-rounded team. And I think a guy at Fidarian Mathis's position might be overlooked because he's not going to necessarily be getting 5 or 6 sacks. But I think that could be the key. As we're talking about this D line, that's the one thing they've at least tried to do differently, is they got rid of Ioannidis and Settle, who are more of the pass rusher guys, and they have Mathis, who's going to occupy people up front, and perhaps that can be a way to unlock Jamin Davis a little more, help the D line out. So I was worried about the Dotson pick being too much of the safety. We just want a guy who can help us right now so we can keep our jobs and not fall apart. But the more I've seen him, I think he can be better than that. And it's Mathis and Robinson Jr., I think, are 2 building blocks as well. So I like the draft class after seeing them way more than I thought I would.
Bob, Sam?
Yeah, I think to Pete's point about keeping your jobs and not having everything fall apart, these guys kind of fit that description in kind. We've talked on past pods about what is success for this team. And I think it's, competing for the division and making the playoffs and winning, 9-10 games. If you could do that this year and next year, like, that's success. So even though, you're not taking on these developmental projects that one day could be superstars, if you are sort of in the same way that I think that competent, like when Ron Rivera was hired, I think his job was to reestablish competency and decency in the organization. And I think that now the task on the football field is just to reestablish competency and competitiveness. I don't think anyone's saying championship, but if you can say, hey, Washington's going to go into every game and be competitive, then I think that would be a big step forward. And I think this draft class sort of raises the floor and accomplishes that goal.
Yeah, I mean, bringing, like you mentioned, Mathis, like if he shows enough this year, that helps you like offset the loss of Payne when he leaves in free agency, or if he does. And so, as long as they can get contributors here and there, like I'll praise Sammy here on the pod. I thought he had a really nice article. What was that, last week, 2 weeks ago, about Dotson's production. And like, you look at the numbers and maybe the baseline's like 600 yards, but those are 600 important yards. Like if he can manage that, Washington was one of 2 teams last year to not have a receiver over 400 yards besides Terry McLaurin. So it is just, can they find those steady contributions? And Dotson does look steady.
And by the way, go ahead.
Sorry,
I know we're running out of time here, but the one great mystery that would make this draft class explode is if Sam Howell turns into anything, and that's for future episodes next year or the year after that. But if he can become a quarterback that you can rely on, then everything else becomes whatever. That's the centerpiece.
Pete Hailey looking for easy clicks right there.
Hell yeah.
But the one thing I'll say about the rookie class too, Percy Butler, Cole Turner. So there's guys throughout the class that could contribute this year. And it also leads to how does that help the team grow in the second half of the year as these guys get more experience? Another thing, last topic, how do they fit in the NFC East, Pete?
So if you want to just go with it, there's not been a repeat winner since 2004, then you have some hope that it's going to be a close kind of Cowboys, Eagles, Washington. I still think they're definitely third. The Giants, perhaps there's a chance for them to really spike. Not like they had Urban Meyer last year, but a really bad coach who could have really been an anchor to that team's chances. But I still think they're clearly in the basement. And then Washington's going to have to get some luck. I think they're definitely inferior to Philly and Dallas, but I wouldn't be surprised if December games are meaningful. I think that's a baseline boring goal, but I think they can be a factor all the way down to the end. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it.
Matt?
I'm really high on the Eagles, like everyone else. I kind of think they're going to win the division. And I do have questions about Dallas, what does their offensive line look like? Are the receivers still going to produce without Amari Cooper there? And how long is Michael Gallup hurt? But yeah, I still have Washington in the third spot. And, they won the division in 2020 largely because of what they did against the rest of the NFC East. They're going to need to be more competitive than they were against Dallas last year, for instance. So I do have questions, but, you can still be third in this division and maybe make the playoffs because of the 7-team format for each conference. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Sam?
Yeah, and to echo, I'm pretty much in alignment with these guys. And I think one of the things that sticks out to me is how aggressive the Eagles have been this offseason, not just in the draft, but also, in most recently in trading for the cornerback from New Orleans. Like, I know that the Eagles might have an easier time attracting free agents or getting the benefit of the doubt because they're seen as one of the smarter teams, one of the more analytically savvy teams. And they've had success recently. But for them to have a problem, which is Jalen Hurts the guy, and then to go out and basically load up the roster and say, if we don't succeed this year, then he is not the answer. For them to help themselves answer their central questions, like, that's a very impressive move to me organizationally. And something that, like, when you see Washington take a step back last year and you say, okay, how are they going to address this problem? And they don't do much in free agency, and they add mostly, guys that will help this year, which is fair. But it's just, hey, like, what is the long-term thinking here? I don't know, but I think that I saw Philly and Washington is pretty even headed into the offseason. Maybe Washington even a little bit ahead once they got Wentz, because I thought Wentz had a higher upside than Jalen Hurts. Or a higher ceiling as of what we've seen. But I think the Eagles have certainly pulled away just in expectations.
Going into the season, you'd have to look at that. I can see this team improving. I can see this team in the end. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the division. Would you? Anybody?
No.
I think it's still close, but would you go into the season with them as the favorites? No. I think there would be a lot to ask based on some moves, based on the past, et cetera. Last thing, tell people where they can find you, Pete, Matt, Sam.
At Pete Hailey, NBCS on Twitter. I'll be the millionth reporter to just simply plug a Twitter on a podcast, but come find me.
And the Washington Football Talk podcast.
Yes, that thing too. Thank you.
There you go.
I'm on Twitter at Sam, 4 TR, SAM, 4 TR.
And you can find me on Twitter at Matthew_Paris, PARAS.
Are you going to get out your OnlyFans, Paris?
No, I'll just plug Rick Snyder's instead.
Yeah. But I think that's when we have to end it on that note. So, guys, thanks a lot. These guys are all great. Please give them a follow, read their stuff at their respective sites. And thanks for coming on, guys.
Oh, this was really fun. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thanks,
Enjoy
guys.
the club, Sam. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Matt, Pete, and Sam for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning with another episode as we inch closer to the season opener against Jacksonville. I'll talk to you next time.